Okay, welcome to the first installment of Meet Roy assembly videos. In this particular video we are going to explain how to assemble the finger kit. Now the finger kit is an index finger, and so these same instructions can be applied to all four main fingers of Roy's hands. So index, middle, ring, and pinky. They all use the same assembly techniques, so this video applies to all four of them. First thing we want to do is go ahead and unpack our kit. So we'll just dump everything out here on the table in front of us and kind of sort through it. Now the servo we can set aside, we're going to use that later. The hardware pack, we can kind of set that aside, and we can lay out all of our components. Now something I do want to say about doing the assembly. We are going to be using super glue, and specifically a super thin super glue, or possibly an Elmer's glue. So you want to make sure you work somewhere where if you drip a little bit of glue on your surface, you're not going to ruin it. So lay down some newspaper, a mat, something to work on so you don't take a chance of messing up your work table. As you can see, there's not too many parts to a finger. One of the key things that we need to realize when we unpack our parts and look at them, you'll find two parts that are identical to each other. If you were to line them up, they're identical. But if you look at them closely, you'll notice that there's the different sides to the part. Now, what we have is when the laser cuts the material, it tends to cut it with a little bit of a V. So what we have is when we look at a part, we'll notice that one side of the part, the circles don't look perfectly circular. They're possibly a little bit oval, and you'll see a little bit more of a burn mark. But if you flip the part over to the other side, you'll notice that everything is really crisp and clean. And what this is this is where the laser is actually exiting the part, and so it's just cutting a real fine line as it exits. So you actually end up with a much cleaner side. So what we want to do is we definitely want to look at our parts, and we want to note which is the cutting side and which is the clean side. We want to note the clean side, and in the exploded view drawing that comes along with the video, you'll notice that I've highlighted the sides of the parts in green, and that green represents our clean side. So again, our clean side is the side that has the nice crisp circles, and the not clean side is the side where you can see the holes are a little oblong and there's a little bit of a burn mark. So we need to note which side's our clean side and which side's not. The first thing that we want to do once we've got our kit laid out here is you want to go ahead and give all your parts a quick sanding. The plywood comes fairly smooth, but not as smooth as it could be, and it'll help take off any of these little burn marks or anything like that. So we want to go through and sand each of our parts. Now, I recommend using one of these sanding pads. You can get this at your local box store, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever you got. And you just want to make sure that you get a 220 grit or a fine, extra fine grit. You want a really smooth grit. We're just trying to clean the surface, not actually sand away material. You could also use a piece of 220 grit sandpaper flat, but I tend to like the sponge because it's got multiple sides. So let's start by opening that up. Now, one thing that you'll find is as we sand parts on the sponge, you'll begin to leave a little bit of sawdust in the sponge. And so as you sand your wood parts, you'll get kind of a light sawdust. But as you go to sand these black ABS parts, you'll leave the black sawdust in the sponge. And that can transfer onto our light colored parts if we sand on the same side of the sponge. So what I like to do is to pick one side of my sanding sponge and put a little Sharpie mark on it. And what that tells me is this is the side that I'm going to use for the black plastic parts, and I'll use the non-Sharpie side for the wooden parts. So we'll put that away. That's about the only use for the Sharpie. So basically what we'll do is just slide our parts over, and we want to take a part, lay it on the sponge, and then just slide it around in kind of a circular back and forth motion really quickly. Doesn't take long, and what you'll find is it really smooths out the wood. Because these parts slide on each other, you get a benefit from having really nicely smooth wood parts. So that's it, just a quick sand on both sides and that part's done. So I'll go ahead and sand out the rest of our parts here, and then we'll start the assembly. Okay, so we finished our wood parts. Now we're going to go ahead and sand our ABS parts. Again, I'm going to flip my sponge to my black side, and you'll notice these things come out really rough. It's just the way the laser cuts them. So I figured they're just going to need a little bit of sanding when you get them, but they clean up really quickly. So again, we're going to take it on its side and give it a quick sanding. And you'll notice it'll kind of dull it out, but it makes it look really clean. So we'll just give both sides a once over, and then I tend to just kind of scrape around, knock off any sharp edge that might be on this little link part. Gotta see if I can hold on to them. So just go around, oops, wrong side of my pad, and give that a good cleaning. They come out really nice. Okay. And there we go, we've sanded up all our parts. Now, we will use the sponge again only if we decide to go with Elmer's glue on the assembly. So we're going to set it aside, but we'll come back to it. Alright, okay, lost one of our parts there.